Hi, everyone. I'm Shelly, and you are watching Countercultural. Today's topic is likely going to ruffle some feathers, and I'm sure that there are already quite a few feathers ruffled right now when it comes to education, which, yes, I'm partially going to be speaking about today because as I record this right now, President Trump is drafting an executive order to abolish the Department of Education. And while this video is not about that, maybe I'll make a video about that in the future. I am just going to throw this out there that I believe that if it does happen, that it would be a huge win for our country. It is my very strong opinion that the Department of Education is unconstitutional in that it violates the 10th Amendment. And I think that it would be such a good thing to give the states their rights when it comes to the education systems in their jurisdictions. But that's not today's topic. As I mentioned earlier, today's topic is actually I'm begging you, parents, to stop letting the school raise your child. And I say this to you not from a place of judgment. I say this to you coming from a place of exhortation and also coming from the place of someone who has been there and done that. But first, let me just tell you why I wanted to talk about this today. A few weeks ago, I was driving somewhere and it was like 7:15 at night and I was behind a school bus. And I thought to myself, there must have been, like an away game, or maybe some middle schoolers or high schoolers had a field trip, maybe to Washington, D.C. or somewhere far away because it was pretty late for kids to be dropped off of school. So as I had to stop behind this bus, again around 7:15, it was dark outside, to watch these children. Well, I wasn't there to watch children, but I watched the children exit the bus, and they were about 7 years old, maybe. I'd say anywhere between first and third grade. And I thought to myself, why are children still on a school bus? Why are they first coming home at 7:15 at night? So I went on a neighborhood website where we can just ask these questions because I was curious to see if this was just like a once and done thing. And what I discovered from asking this question, many people replied that many children are in school until 6 o'clock p.m. every day. This includes primary age children, like first grade, second grade, third grade. I'm not sure if the kindergartners do it, but all ages, their parents will sign them up for some sort of program where they are in school until 6 o'clock p.m. every day, and then until they get the bus home, it's 7:15 until these very young children are coming home at night. Now, what I also found out as I was asking these questions is that our school district gives children free breakfast, obviously lunch. I believe it's free lunch in our district too. And they feed the children who sign up for this program dinner in addition to giving them homework help. Now, let me just say that there are very, very extreme circumstances where that might be necessary. If there is a family that is very, very indigent, or if unfortunately, there are some parents out there who just aren't the best and may not even be concerned with helping their children with homework. Although I would have to say that school might be part of the problem with that to begin with. That's also for another video because I could go on an entire rant about that. But here's what I want to talk about to you today. If your child is leaving on the school bus at 7 o'clock every morning and coming home at 7:15 at night because you are sending your child to school all day long, every day, I want you to think about the repercussions this is going to have on your child's life. When your child is only home long enough to maybe take a shower and then go to sleep and not spend any sort of family time together, this is going to have a very negative effect, not only on their behavior, it's going to have a very negative effect on their faith. Bad company corrupts good morals. I have to throw that out there. And I just want you to think to yourself, if this is what you envisioned, when you found out that you were expecting a child? Did you envision that you would send your child off every day to be not only educated by the government, but also raised by the government? Because I'm going to tell you this, it is not the government's responsibility to feed your child breakfast and to feed your child dinner. And again, I know lunch has always been a thing with school, and it is not the government's job to provide homework help for your child. This is where you, as the parent, need to come in. Now, make no mistake about this. The government will, and when I say the government, I'm talking about public schools. But I do have to say that the same thing goes for private schools and even some daycares where children are there after school for hours and hours and are only home for an hour or two a night. Again, there are extreme circumstances where this has to happen. I'm not talking about those circumstances though. What I am talking about though is when a parent is home after a child comes home from school and still decides to send their children to either these programs or to the daycare. I've heard so many daycare workers say that a lot of times parents will be on staycation. You know, they'll be home for the week from work and they will still send their child to daycare because they will say that they need a break. And I used to have that mentality. I wish 15 years ago that I would have had. My cat is out there getting after something in the kitchen. But anyway, I wish I would have had someone 15 years ago who would tell me, Shelly, it is not it's not the school's job to do these things for your children. Now, thankfully, when my children were in school, they didn't have programs that ran this late, and they certainly weren't feeding the children dinner. But I did sign my children up for every after school program that I thought they might be interested in. And these typically ran until 4 o'clock. And my children weren't bused. I would just walk to the school to go pick them up afterwards. So it wasn't quite as bad as this. But my children would get out of school at 2:40, but then they would stay there until 4 o'clock for these programs. And I patted myself on the back for this, telling myself that this is good for my children's education. It's going to broaden their horizons, and they're going to have time with their friends. But in actuality, I'm going to be honest with you, a very large part of the reason that I was doing this was because I thought, oh, I get to have some more quiet time while my children are at school. And this is unfortunately a mentality that is so popular in our society today, that children are treated more as nuisances than as members of the family, members of the family that we have been entrusted by God to nurture and to raise and to know Him. So, what I started to realize, my cat is so fat and he's knocking stuff off the counter. Anyway, so I'm not going to stop though. But what I began to realize when my children were in these programs is that their behavior worsened. There was no sort of bonding in the family. And when my children would come home from school, they would be so tired, so completely worn out, and they would be completely out of sorts, very, very cranky. And it's a recipe for disaster when you have multiple cranky children. And then on top of it, you have a parent who doesn't stop to think, well, what is the reason that my children are being cranky? So every day that I was spending with my children, which wasn't a large amount of time, was spent correcting their behavior and being awfully cranky back to them because I just couldn't understand why they didn't want to listen for me. So again, I'm going to remind you that as the parent, it is up to you to raise your children. It is up to you to feed your children. It is up to you to help your child with their homework. Now, I homeschool my children now, and I'm just going to throw this in for those of you who might be thinking about homeschooling. I think that homeschooling is actually easier than helping multiple children with their homework. I have a video on my other channel about that explains why, but that is exactly what I have found out to be the case. So I'm just going to throw this little advertisement for homeschooling in here, but it's very disheartening for me. And so many people are talking about, the breakdown of the family and how children nowadays are having major behavior issues are addicted to screens, and the list goes on and on and on. But unfortunately, what is happening is many people are turning to these programs at school because they think that they are helping their children. But what is actually doing is breaking down the family even more, because parents no longer know how to be parents. They're so used to other people raising their children for them that when they actually do have them, they don't know what they're supposed to do. And this has been going on for a few generations now, and it's going on. It's getting even worse. I also do have to add that I believe it might have been Kamala Harris. I'm not sure. But I do believe that it was Kamala Harris who was actually for public boarding schools not too long ago. And we're almost at that point right now where the public schools are basically like boarding schools for these children who are signed up for these programs and are there all day long. And, make no mistake, this is not something that is, a humanitarian issue for these schools. They are doing this because they are trying to take our children and they are trying to raise them in the way that they want people to behave. And, it's all about conformity. And as believing parents, especially, we have got to remember that we are the ones that our children need to be looking up to, and there are some great teachers out there. My children, when they were in school, they had some amazing teachers. Some of them were Christian teachers. So I'm not knocking all teachers, although unfortunately, there's a lot of really bad teachers too. But it's not their job to raise your child, even when they are the best teacher there. It's not their job to raise your child. So the next time that there is some sort of after school program for you to sign your children up for, I want you to just remember this one thing. The government is they're itching to get their hands on children. That's why Head Start programs are so prevalent, and that they will take so many children in. There are Head Start programs, I believe, that maybe even take children at 2 years old now, maybe even younger, because I haven't looked into it soon. So we've got the public preschool and pre-K programs going all the way up through 17, 18 years old. And before, it was just 6, 7 hours a day in school. But that's not the case anymore. Now, very often, these children are at school 10+ hours a day. Where are the parents? Where are you? That's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and would like to hear more of what I have to say, even if you're mad, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one down below. And I hope you have a great day.